Sometimes we don't miss the person. We miss the idea of who we hoped they would become or we would become. There's a difference between remembering someone and romanticizing them. And when loneliness or nostalgia, guilt, or heartbreak show up, our memory can become very selective. Hi, I'm Scarlett Classic, and welcome to Classic Advice, a mental health podcast offering guidance for resilient souls, anchoring calm amid the chaos. When we remember old friends or maybe an ex, we can miss them, and we can have that selective memory of just the good moments, the laughs and the chemistry and the comfort, or those late night talks. And we romanticize the past. We think that maybe we should call them up and get back together with them. But that relationship ended because it was toxic. They weren't good for us and we weren't good for them. I'm just talking about the toxic past relationships. Just to be clear. Missing someone that was toxic for you. And in our head, we know that past relationship, whether it was romantic or friendship, was toxic. That's why it ended. But our memories can be selective when we get lonely. And we think to ourselves, maybe we should call them up. Maybe we should get back together. But missing someone doesn't always mean that they are suddenly now good for us. Nostalgia can really blur those reality lines. We can become, incredibly emotional when we're hurting. And it's common and completely normal to look backwards when we're searching for comfort or familiarity or emotional safety. And nostalgia can blur those lines, those painful memory lines can be blurred. We remember the highlights, we remember the good times, and we can minimize the chaotic ones. We can minimize the traumatic moments. We excuse the bad behaviors and the bad patterns that we know in our head is unhealthy, and we forget how exhausted and hurt we felt when we were in that relationship. Because we don't miss that person. We miss, the potential or the hope or the future that we imagined. The version of them that we wanted them to be or wanted ourselves to be. In these moments, are you actually missing the person or that possibility? And are you remembering that relationship honestly and truthfully? What were you constantly trying to survive or fix or explain away, dismiss? Because our loneliness can accidentally rewrite history. And then we want to go back to that toxic place that wasn't good for us, that we left for a reason. Just because something is familiar doesn't always mean that it was healthy for us. One of the hardest truths about healing is realizing that familiarity can feel like love, even when it hurts us, even when it's toxic. Because that loneliness will blind us to the reality of how things actually are. Those toxic dynamics can create emotional highs and lows that become very, deeply ingrained and wired into our nervous system, so that inconsistency or chasing validation or waiting for change or walking on eggshells, that love bombing, after emotional pain, that cycle is what we know. So that cycle feels like peace even when it's not. I had to learn, like when I got into the relationship that I'm in now, it was so uncomfortable for me because I was safe. There was no toxicness to it. And it was so different that I almost didn't know what to do with it. I had to learn how this safety that I felt was my new normal and was going to be my new normal. When you're constantly in that survival mode for years, and then you're thrown into a healthy relationship, it feels weird. So when we're lonely, we crave what felt quote unquote normal to us before, which was that chaotic toxicness, but it doesn't mean that that toxic relationship is good for us. We need to learn how to be in a healthy relationship, even though that doesn't feel normal because we might never have experienced it before. Just because we miss the person doesn't mean that it was a healthy relationship. It just means that our nervous system adapted to unpredictability, and that was our normal. And we need to learn how to have the healthy and be in the predictable ones that are calm and anchored instead of being tossed around and capsized all the time. When you look back at those relationships, were you actually truly safe? Or were you just attached because of the, what do they call that? When you're in that toxic relationship and you're trauma bonded. Did you feel emotionally calm around them? Or like you were walking on eggshells? Were you truly loved for being just you? Or did you feel like you had to change it or be a certain way in order to be loved? How much of the relationship was spent hoping for things to finally change but never did? And that attachment can keep us connected to things that are hurting us. That trauma bond. We can grieve what could have been. I did that when I went through my divorce. I grieved for what could have been. That future that I imagined, that vision of them and us that I would have hoped happen. The life that I imagined in my head wasn't the reality. And that grief is real, and that it deserves compassion and understanding on our own part. You can grieve someone that wasn't good for you. It's just, don't go back to them. Don't go backwards into relationships that aren't good for you. It's better to be a little bit lonely than to go back into a relationship that is so wrong. It's hard being lonely. I totally get that. I have been lonely a lot. But I discovered that it was better for me to be a little bit lonely for a while than it was to be in such a toxic place. This healing doesn't mean pretending that there was no good memories. There were definitely good memories. And we can, appreciate those moments and still admit to the fact that the relationship as a whole wasn't healthy or sustainable, or that it was actually hurting us. That it didn't give us peace. That it gave us trauma. And those can both exist. When we see the relationship for what it really is, the good moments and the bad ones, that clarity and can give us closure on it. We can admit to the fact that there were good times and bad times. But not every person that we miss belongs back in our life. For our own, setting those boundaries to protect our own mental health. And then you will find someone that is good for you. Whether that be romantic or friendship. That isn't toxic. Because that dream and possibility is so much, it's worth it to chase that than to turn around and go backwards. You are allowed to miss someone without reopening the door and getting more trauma. You're allowed to remember the good without forgetting why you left that relationship. And accepting that hard truth that we don't always miss the person, we miss what could have been. Thank you for tuning in to Classic Advice, guidance for resilient souls. May you stay anchored in what steadies you, rise resilient through what challenges you, and carry calm into whatever comes next. Take care. Love ya. Bye.